evening, wherever you are watching from. I hope you are doing great and I hope your week went good. So today, Nelly and I, we are doing another amazing session. It's all about reducing the communication gap between parents and children. I know for sure there are certain days that we parents we just want to say our own thing and then we expect our children to just obey and do what we say. So and that is bridging a lot of difficulties between parents and children. So today Nelly and I we're going to be diving deep to share our experiences on how to bridge that gap or how to narrow that gap, communication gap between ourselves and our children. So for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Peggy Barre. I'm a Survivor Empowerment Coach and the founder of Arise and Thrive Academy. Now, let me pass it to Nelly to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I am Nelly Kwasumi, a social worker, transformational life coach, and co-founder of Hand in Hand Community CIC. Welcome to another session. It's always a pleasure to have you. So please, if you are watching and you have any comments, type it and we will read out your comments. And if you have any question, put the question and we'll respond to it. Thank you so much.
Great. So I think the conversation today is going to become most of the things that we might be talking today might overlap with what we've already been saying in our previous video. But I feel that maybe, Nelly, should we start with some statistics first? Because communication, when they talk about communication, it means everything. Communication, whether communication at work, communication at home, communication wherever we go. But sometimes as parents, we underestimate the power of communication and we underestimate the value of communication within our homes and within our parenting. And I know some of us, we carry that value or we carry that habit from our own parents. And we feel that the way our parents communicated to us when we were growing up is the same way we communicate with our kids today. And it's not working at all, Nelly. I can say that for sure. It's not working, so we need to adapt our communication styles to make sure that we bridge that gap, and we're going to be talking, these are some of the things that we're going to be sharing in this episode today. So, first of all, what is communication? I think maybe it would be nice to start with what is communication, because I know most of the time we just like, communication. What is communication? Now, I'm just going to be defining it as the way I understand it and from the parent children perspective. Communication is a two-way conversation, right? You talk and the other person listen. The other person talk and the other one listen. And when you talk about communication involves a different aspect. It involves listening. It involves you taking into consideration every aspect of that person's body language. Because sometimes we may be listening to somebody to speak, unlike when they may be communicating through other communication styles. And if we don't understand it, we may miss a certain message that our children are passing on to us. And I've experienced this so many times, Nelly. When you're saying something and either that child is rolling her eyes and you think that rolling of that eyes is just normal. No, they're communicating something. So yes, so that is just my own understanding of communication. It's a two-way straight. You listen, somebody talks about somebody, the other person listen and actually digest the information before they can respond. I don't know, Nelly, do you have anything that?
And sometimes silence is also communication, because
Yes,
when we talk, especially with our children, sometimes our children don't have the vocabulary to say what they are experiencing. So then, because of that struggle, they sit silent. But then when they sit silent, it is rather unfortunate that a lot of parents conclude that the child has agreed to what they have said. And also, there are some children who are non-verbal. They also communicate. Some might be just by blinking. That parent or that carer would understand the child's communication language. Sometimes those who are non-verbal they can use just lifting a finger already indicates that's a way of communication. So sometimes looking at a particular direction, say looking left means something. That is their way of communication. Looking right, looking up, looking down. So as parents, as carers, we need to be very observant, like Peggy said, and let us understand our children's communication styles, because it's not only verbal communication that is communication. We have also non-verbals, and we have body cues. We might be talking, like Peggy and myself might be talking, but then our body language, is it the same with what we are saying? Sometimes there's so much incongruence, like
Yeah.
when someone is saying something, but their body language is doing something. For instance, if I'm saying that no and nodding my head, it's so confusing because you are hearing no, but then I'm nodding my head, and that nodding of head, it indicates that it's a yes. So if you know, you would go with the body language, because there's a saying that the body language never lies. So that's why it's good when you're speaking, you also watch that person. Sometimes in phone calls, you can be communicating on a phone call whereby it's just audio. But then there are other things that you can watch out for: the tone, the voice, the pitch, and things like that. Those give you cues in that communication. And one person will be talking, the other person listening, because if two people are speaking at the same time, that communication doesn't flow, because one might want to be talking over the other person, and that communication is not really flowing. And sometimes in communication, we hear of effective communication, which is just part of what Peggy has talked about: talking and listening, taking turns. But sometimes we get into conversations whereby the person speaking is actually talking, but then the person listening is not listening to understand. They are hearing, but then thinking of what they will respond. That way,
Yeah.
it's not effective communication, because there are certain things that you miss out when that person is saying, because you are busy processing or framing a question that you want to ask that person. So it's a matter of practicing different skills on effective listening. And it comes natural, especially if you practice communication skills like listening. You can start with those around you. So yeah, there are different forms of communication. And it is very, very important, because when our children feel that they are listened to and they are being understood, it gives them an emotional safety, because they know that, yes, if they speak, if they have something to talk about, they know that a parent will listen to them. And it gives them that emotional safety that, yes, they can speak to someone. Because like our children, they go out there, they hear a lot, they call them names, even on social media and things like that. If we don't give that room, I know Peggy and myself, we've talked a lot about psychological safety. If we don't provide that psychological safety for our children, we are indirectly sending them away. And it comes in communication, because it's how we communicate. How does it make our children feel?
That is so true, Nelly. And like we say, the communication, this is where if there is that gap, you'll see many children going through a lot of challenges with their parents. Sometimes when you look at it closely, Nelly, it's just that communication breakdown. That is a problem. The mom is talking, the child is not listening. The child is talking, or not just the mom, the parent is not listening, and nobody is listening to anyone. And if we, just like you say, if we don't change our communication style, especially us, the parents, say, you know what, let us learn, first of all, what is communication and what does it entail? What does effective communication entails? If we do not take that time to learn it, then there's just going to be that total blockage. And no wonder sometimes we feel like, you know what, we're screaming at the top of the roof, like we're talking and that child is not listening. I'm talking and they're not listening. Maybe it's because you haven't really reassessed your communication style. So it is very important that at least we learn how to do that. Just like Nelly say, sometimes it may not come out naturally. Sometimes it's that willingness, that willfulness to say, you know what, maybe I'm having a communication barrier in this, but I'm going to learn how to communicate effectively. So if
Yeah.
we want to just dive deep, yep, Nelly.
Yeah, just to add to that, you know, when we speak, we relate most especially to the African families because that's where
Mm,
we have our experience, that's our background.
mhm. Yeah.
In the African community or in African parenting, parents mostly give instructions. Just for example, a child, do this, and it's a full stop. But
Yeah.
children, we know children are very curious. So they want to understand what they need to do, how they need to do, why they need to do. They have those so many questions. But
Mm,
unfortunately, when some children ask those questions, straight away the parents say, you are being rude. Who are you to be asking me those questions? But then the child just wants to understand. So they will do what they've been asked to do. But because of the way we were parented, because our parents just used to give instructions, do this full stop, we have copied the same parenting styles and we want to
mhm,
use that on our children. And this easily leads to communication breakdown because the parent might say, I asked you to do this, and the child will be like, I asked you why I had to do it and you didn't respond. And you have that to and fro movement. And then now you start thinking, who has who has the responsibility or who is in control here? Because the
mhm.
parent wants the child to listen to them. The child wants the parent to listen to them. And there's this argument to and fro. And sometimes children talk back. But then, like Peggy said, it's for the parent to reassess how is your communication style? Because every human being, no matter how old the child is, whether the child is just a few weeks old, they deserve that respect and dignity. So
Mhm.
I think there's some reframing that needs to take place around I'm your elder, listen to the elder. I mean, I know elders have a lot of life experiences, but it doesn't mean that they know everything because the child might know certain things. It might be very little, but there are certain things that the child might know that the adult
Mhm.
does not know. Even regardless, is to make that child feel that their viewpoints, their opinion is valuable because those are some
Yeah.
of the little things that really impact communication. Because if a child is speaking and they feel that even if I speak, it doesn't make any difference, then the child might start withdrawing and they'll not want to
Mhm.
be speaking. And that's already the beginning of communication breakdown between parents and the child. And it might, in the long run, significantly affect the child because they might develop the belief that they don't need to say anything because they won't be listened and it will have impact, say, with their
Mhm.
communication, self-esteem.
Yeah. No, that is so true, Nelly. I totally agree with that. Right. So if we want to dive into, we had some sub points that we're going to be talking on. It's just going to be guiding our conversation today. I think the first one is learn simple ways to listen better. So I don't know, Nelly, we want to talk about that. Maybe if you got a statistics, and then we can dive
Yeah, I
into
have a
that.
I have I have my book here. So when I'm looking down, I just want to be very accurate with the statistic that I'm reading. So okay, it says that research shows that 78% of children feel secure when their parents practice active listening. So if their parents are actually listening to understand what the child is saying and not just hearing what the child is saying. Furthermore,
Mhm.
92% of families report improved relationship when there's good communication with their children.
Mhm.
Positive parent-child conversations during childhood are linked to low aggression and better social adjustment in adolescence.
Mm.
So those are the statistics that I got.
That is so interesting. And if you look at the statistics, I always say one interesting thing when you read statistics, when you read it in your ear, you're hearing numbers. But think about it, those are people, those are human beings, right? If you want to convert that number, that is huge. And if you think about how it is actually impacting the society. So statistics are good because it gives us that perspective and it makes us understand the gravity of that problem. And so, you know what? We need to find a solution to this, or people need to be conscious of the fact that this thing is happening and we need some change. Now, if I just want to share a little bit about my own personal experience, learning simple ways to listen better. We were talking about African style, like parents say something and the child listen. I can put my hand up that, you know what, that kind of that kind of value, that kind of belief was instilled in me that, you know what, when I say this, you do it without, you don't even question me, don't even ask why, just do it, you know. And there was one time that I started becoming so frustrated because you tell a child something and you will repeat that thing like 10 times, 10 times. And then you're wondering, why is it that this child is not actually listening to me when I'm talking? Or is it that this child is deliberately not doing this thing that I'm asking them to do? And as a parent, sometimes you can become really frustrated, right? And you walk into the house, even though you've repeated that thing over and over, you walk, come back, that same thing hasn't been done. And there was one day I called my son, I was like, is it that you're not listening to what I'm saying? Or is it that what is happening? And he said, I forget. I just forget. I forget. So every day, that means I have to be reminding you every day to do that thing. Okay, tell me, what can I do to instill that thing in your brain so that you will not forget next time? And he stood there looking at me like that. And children, this day, what they'll do, they just stroke their shoulder. They just make like that. And that's it. And that's an answer that they've given you, And as parent, honestly, it can be very, very frustrating. So what I tend to do these days is that there was one technique that I learned from you, Nelly. Sometimes I ignore it. I don't say it. But even though they think I'll be expecting them to do it. And another time I will send a text message. I say, you know what? I know that maybe you will forget that thing again. But I'm just sending this text message just to remind you that please, could you kindly do this thing and all of that. Now I've got it as a text message. Don't tell me that you forgot because you got it on you have it in your phone as a text message. So these are some of the things that Nelly, it baffles me because why is there that communication gap? Again, it's because of our beliefs where we're coming from and the way we are communicating. Sometimes we are communicating, and it's because we haven't actually instilled that effective communication culture within the family. Where you're talking to, as a parent, I can put my hand up, I'm guilty, where most of the time, maybe I'm talking to my child and I am on my phone. I'm talking and I'm doing something on my phone. What is it that I'm telling that child? That maybe when they're talking to me as well, they are on their phone. And whenever we are distracted, that communication, you're communicating and the other person may not listen, is not listening. And maybe because you're also distracted on your phone, that communication, what you're trying to say does not really flow and it doesn't really make sense so that that other person can understand. So what I tend to do sometimes, even though I'm trying, like I say, I am still learning. Sometimes I try to, if I want to say something seriously to my kids, I make sure I don't hold my phone. I make sure I don't touch my phone. And I make sure I try to find a time, a convenient time where they can listen to me. And then I can express what I want to express. But then another thing that I've learned is that expressing also matters. How is not what you say that matters, is how you say it. And I've come to learn that when I talk in a very nice, motherly, tony type of tone of my kids, they pick it faster. But if I come and I'm screaming like I usually scream sometimes, I know they will not even get what I'm saying. They'll turn around and say, you know what, they didn't even hear me. So how do I narrow that my communication gap? Just like Nelly and I were saying, is that it's about actually identifying, assessing our communication gaps ourselves, and then trying to say that, okay, this is where I'm failing. This is where I'm going to learn, and this is how I want to make an improvement, within my household, so that my children can understand me and I can understand them, and they know that they are being seen and heard. So yeah, I just thought I'd share that little experience.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Peggy. It's really helpful. When we share our personal experiences, it the effective is different because that's what we have gone through. At the time we were dealing with those challenges, we were not even thinking that we were just using the techniques that we had at the time. We didn't even know that now we'll be sharing it because the result has been positive. So I've shared my own experiences so many times where so many years back, I was really struggling because I was in an emotionally very low space where
Mm-hmm.
when I wanted to speak to my children or with my children, especially when it comes to disciplining my children,
Mm-hmm.
when I opened my mouth, tears would just come down because I was emotionally low. So at that
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn because I knew that I wanted to be a role model for my children. And I realized earlier on that I need to work on myself. So
Yeah.
that's when I got into lots and lots of reading, listening to videos and things like that. And I started using many different techniques. So there was a time when I know communication breakdown within the family, and my children were really struggling. They, I saw them and I knew they wanted to communicate, but then they were not talking. They were not, you know, just the way they would act, the body language.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about the body cues. I would know that
Mm-hmm.
there's something heavy within them. So then I started, like with my two younger children, I dedicated time for each of them, 30 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and I told them. So bit by bit, I mean, these things doesn't just solve easily. It takes time, and
Yeah.
consistency is key. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I implemented was that when it was meal time, no television, no phones. So we will sit at the table and eat together. At the time, we used to eat together. But now
Mm-hmm.
everyone has a different time that they're doing different things. So it's really hard
Mm-hmm.
for us to eat together.
Yeah.
But just similar to what you said, when we are having when I want to have like certain communication, it doesn't have to be serious. If I want them to know that I'm fully present, I take away all distractions. I put my phone away and
Mm-hmm.
I tell them if they come with their phone, I tell them to put their phones away. And sometimes
Yeah.
they realize that my phone is away and they will automatically put off their phone. Or if it's something that they need to finish, I'll wait for them. So if they want to finish sending a text or something like that, I'll wait for them. So they understand that I am waiting for them to put the phone away. And then when they
Mm-hmm.
do that, then I start talking. Or sometimes when I'm talking and their phone goes off and they want to answer it, I will stop talking. Even if I'm mid-sentence or mid-word, I'll just stop
Mm-hmm.
talking. And then when they realize that I've stopped talking because of them, then they will hurry or they'll stop whatever they were doing on the phone, put it away, and then come back. And then
Mm-hmm.
interestingly, with regarding the shouting, for you and me is opposite because my children know that I hardly raise my voice. So if I tell them to do something and they don't do it, they know that to an extent I'm patient. I will tell
Mm-hmm.
them, I'll use different ways to tell them. But the moment I raise my voice, it's like confusion in my house because my children don't like it when I raise my voice. If I have told them to do something for days and days and they don't do it, the minute I raise my voice because they know it's rare for me to raise my voice. But when I
Mm-hmm.
raise my voice, they know that I'm really, really upset. And straight
Mm-hmm.
away, they will go and do whatever they needed to do. And the funny is,
Mm-hmm.
it will not take them long. And sometimes
Yeah.
I ask them, why do they have to push me to shout before they do something that it will take them just a short time to do? So that's where
Mm-hmm.
we are opposite.
Absolutely. And like I say, sometimes we learn these things from it's learned behavior, and there are times that we again the experience that you've been through where you feel like someone is putting you pressure to do things. I'll say, for example, there were times where I felt like it is my responsibility to make sure that the kids come out right, like everything is perfect and all of that. And sometimes when you're trying to make sure that they attain that achievement that they want to attain, and you're not seeing it, again, that frustration, that anger, But like I say, it has come a long way. I've learned over the years that, what, it is not about the screaming, it's not about whatever, it's just about you communicating at that child's level, making sure that you, just like you said, Nelly, they are human beings. They need to be respected. You need to give them some dignity. You need to be able to actually communicate clearly, calmly, so that they can actually listen to what you're saying. And we're talking about ways of improving a listening skill, because listening skill is something that many people lack it. If I tell you, there's sometimes, like Nelly said, when somebody is communicating to you, rather than you listening to understand, you're hearing to respond immediately. You're already forming your own explanation in your head, and so you're missing some vital information that that person is trying to communicate. And then by the time you open your mouth to respond, you might even be responding off track. You might be responding with that, because your response may not even reflect what that person has just communicated. Why? Because you were not listening. So listening is an important part of communication, which I feel that us parents, if we practice that skill, is really going to narrow that gap, that communication gap between us and our children. And one of the ways we talk about reducing that improving that listening skill is by reducing distraction. Like I said earlier on, our phones, we've got our phones, everything we want to do, we've got our phone in our hands. And reducing that distraction is just like Nelly and I have said, learn to put that phone away. Especially if you want to have, I know there's some casual things that you may just want to say to your kid. It's fine. You can have your phone, but if you have a serious communication that you maybe want to ask them about their day, they've gone to school, they've come back. You want to have a conversation with them. How did their day go? You know, that is a moment where if it means you putting that phone away, avoiding that distraction so that you can actually have a two-way conversation, looking them in their eyes, looking for that non-verbal cues, like Nelly have said, because sometimes we may be communicating and they're responding in another way. They maybe say, oh, and I know my son, he loves it when you say, how was school today? School was fine. School was fine. And as a parent, I've learned now that what I do is that I ask a follow-up propping question, which is an open-ended question, again, which is another key to improving that narrowing that communication gap, where you can ask open-ended question. What do you mean by fine? Tell me, what was it that made it fine or made it good, so that they can at least have that time to little express a little bit more how their day went. And we'll talk again about using this a technique called razor, which all it means, like, R stands for pay attention. Again, sometimes when we're communicating with our children, we don't pay attention. And trust me, there are days that I do that, where you're talking and maybe you're in the kitchen, your hand is doing something else, and maybe you're doing something else. So you're not really paying attention to what you're saying to that child. And again, the A stands for appreciate, where we need to actually appreciate what they're saying. Sometimes when you communicate, just by you nodding and saying, responding and say, yeah, I understand, I hear you, I see you, I feel you. All of those little cues that will be telling the other person that this person is actually listening is very important, as parents. And then we talk about summarizing, which is the S. Again, for us to make the person know that we've actually heard what they've said, we've understood what they've said, it is always good to summarize it and say, okay, I hear you. So you were saying that, for example, if my child is telling me about their school day, how what happened in class, for me to tell them that I've actually listened to what they've said is for me to summarize that thing that they've said, in that way. And when we do this as parents, sometimes we may think that it is not significant. It's actually playing a lot in our children's life because that is the same way that they're going to be keen, when they're listening to us. And the last but not the least on the RASA is ask question. Sometimes we ask questions, how was your day? Tell me more. What happened? When that thing happened this way, how did it? And again, by so doing, it actually sparks more conversation within the parent and the child. And we've talked about reflective listening again, which is similar to paraphrasing what they've said, just to understand. And then the most important aspect, which I've learned a lot, Nelly, in a hard way, is wait to speak. Wait for your turn to speak. I know you are the parents. I know you're the boss. I know we are the boss that, we can let us wait for our turn to speak. Because sometimes, again, we can rush into cutting that child when that child is trying to explain something, even if we don't agree with what that child is explaining. Let us just exercise the patience to wait, let that child finish what they're explaining before we can step in to respond. And then, of course, we talk about show engagement, which is all about maintaining eye contact. Don't be talking to that child and looking away or doing something else. That child is not going to take it seriously. It's about when you're having that conversation, learn eye contact, look at them in the face, put some smile. Like Nelly said, make it more relaxed. Don't make it tense, because if we are clunking our jaws, our facial expression with twisting our face is looking as if, that child is going to scare that child and it's going to shut down. They're even listening. They're not even going to be listening. They're just going to put that blank curtain. So whatever thing we're saying, they're not listening. So it's about the way we posture ourselves, the way we talk. We may be saying something very seriously, but you have that undertone assertiveness inside. So they know that that thing is serious, but it's about making it welcoming so that they can listen to what you're trying to communicate. So yeah, so Nelly, I don't know, I think you've got some points as well to add on that.
Yeah, you've said most of the points, but just one thing that I want to talk about is
Mhm.
for us to reflect what we have heard. Because sometimes we parents and children are from two different generations. And
Mm,
like the Gen Zs, they use certain words that have a different meaning to their
yeah.
parents, the same word but different meanings. So it's
Mm,
good practice to rephrase what you've heard, give a brief summary, because
yeah.
if you say something and the child hears something else, the child will
Hmm.
tell you, no, that's not what I said, or that's not what I mean.
Yeah.
Because again, it's the different meanings of words that different generations use. So
Mm,
it's good practice. It might be small, but just
hmm.
reflect it. Pick up only, it's not to explain or talk about everything that the child has said. It's just to pick up on the main points, pick up on
Yeah.
the main points and say, from our conversation, you said this, 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 just briefly.
Hmm.
If the child hears something you've said and it's not what they meant, they will correct
Hmm.
you. And again, taking turns to speak and listen is a
Yeah.
really good way to bridge that communication gap between parents and children. Yeah, that's just all I wanted to add.
Yeah, that's so true. And one thing that I wanted to pick on again is about sometimes when we want to have a conversation, it's always easier if we know it's like a little prep, especially when you want to have a serious conversation with your child. There's no harm for you to prep. What are you going to
You
say?
know, Peggy, let me just interrupt you there. You've talked about serious. That's something that I want to pick up because you've talked about serious like three times in this conversation. When we when we start making conversations to be serious, that is when we invite others to start bringing up barriers because No one
Mm,
really wants to have a serious conversation. It's like if I say, Peggy, we need to talk, that looks serious, isn't it?
yeah.
But then if I say, Peggy, do you have 5 minutes? Let's have a chat. It's different.
Mm,
So it's for me, is that seriousness, because without using the word serious or let's have a
yeah.
talk, there are other ways that you can get your message across in a way
Yeah.
that that person will not feel intimidated, because
Mm-hmm.
when they feel intimidated, they will easily shut up, and then that communication will not flow, and then it might need lead to probably argument, or one person will stop talking or things like that. So sorry, I
Yeah.
just interrupted there because you
So
talked about
maybe it's
seriousness.
not about maybe that when I say serious, I mean like there's some casual conversation that you have sometimes with your children, and there's some conversation which I mean like, for example, if I want to do like say whenever I receive their report from school or school report, that conversation that I'm having regarding that school report, that is what I tend like but now it's about reframing. It's about reframing. It is that you can still have that serious conversation with your child without actually making it look serious, but they're still going to get
Exactly.
the message. So that's what I got
Yeah,
here. So I'm going to
because
clarify.
like for myself, probably I do that a lot because that is how I understand, everyone
Mm-hmm.
is wired differently. For me, if someone, no matter how serious something is, if you talk to me, I like when things are informal. So if
Yeah.
there's something serious and you talk to me calmly, I easily understand. But
Yes.
when you shout or when you want to make it really serious, it freaks
Mm-hmm.
me out and I don't understand, because I know even at work, I've got in trouble a lot of the times because I remember this time we were in a meeting and it was meeting with the legal team and my managers and things like that. And they asked me a question and I just burst out laughing. And then and I don't laugh when I'm laughing, I don't know how to laugh quietly. So I just
Mm-hmm.
laughed out loud. And then when I realized that, oh, I was in a meeting and I turned, everyone was just staring at me. And I was like, oops, just me again. And, and then I was like, okay, that's just me. It has happened. What else? So I was just
Yeah.
thinking that in my head because that's the way I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I express things to people. Sometimes I might take it informally, but then if it is, I mean, sometimes I can be playful, but some people will take it seriously, especially people who don't know me. Because
Yeah.
sometimes, so again, it depends, but like with my children, they know when I'm serious and they know when I'm not. Because when I say something and I repeat it and I repeat it, they gauge the tone. So
Yeah.
again, with our children, we know our children, or we aim to know our children and for our children
Mm-hmm.
to understand us, but it's to avoid that to and fro argument, because who is in control here? We would
Yeah.
assume that the parents will be in control. But unfortunately, sometimes there's a reverse parenting whereby the child or the children are playing the
Mm-hmm.
role of the parent, and the parent is playing the role of a child. So those things we
Mm-hmm.
just need to be very careful and start examining our own communication. What do we need to improve on? Because all these skills, we can learn them, because whatever we are using, we learn them because they are learned behaviors. So
Yeah.
it start examining our communication styles, whether they are effective, whether they are not effective. Even if they are effective, you might still want to improve on them because the learning is continuous.
Absolutely. And that brings us nicely to the second point, which talks about understand your child's perspective. Because again, as parents, it's all about I am the parent here. You must listen to me, So we don't tend to really understand where that child is coming from or understand their perspective, no matter how that perspective may be. There's sometimes that when we don't agree with the child's opinion or where that child is coming from, we just shut the conversation immediately without even giving them the chance to express themselves. And we forget to know that sometimes they may even be expressing themselves from a naivety, from a limited standpoint. They may not even understand the whole perspective. But you now, as an adult who actually understand the whole perspective, that may be an opportunity to express to your child that, hey, rather than look at it from this point of view, have you thought about looking at that same thing from this point of view? So it's about understanding, and understanding a child's perspective, first of all, begins with giving them that safe environment where, first of all, they have that courage to, well, not the courage, because we're not talking here about courage. Our children should feel free to talk to us anytime. We shouldn't let it be like they've got to build up courage to talk to us. No, that is where that barrier comes in. So it's about letting them know that, hey, I've got my parent, I've got my mom, I've got my dad. If I've got something that is troubling me, I will just go to them and then talk to them. Right. And they may not always be right. Same as we parents, we may not be right. So it's about making sure we actually understand where that child is coming from. So Nelly, I don't know whether you have some points to, add on
Yeah, I
that.
have some statistics here. Research
Mm.
research shows that 85% of children feel their problems are taken seriously when their parents listen actively.
Mm. Powerful.
Yeah, 85%. That's massive.
And
And
that is so massive. And that is where we talk about active listening, and which we talk about the first point when we're talking about how to listen. So for somebody who may be thinking, what is active listening? Active listening just means implementing or doing those things that we said that were important, like, putting away your phone when you're having a conversation, avoiding distraction, listening to looking them in the eye, or having that facial that contact, rephrasing the question, asking, open-ended question, just making them feel that, what, you are listening. So it's
and
very
then
important. Yeah.
yeah, and when we are talking, we've talked about use open-ended questions, but sometimes when we
Mm-hmm.
are talking, words carry a lot of weight. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, I just picked this up, Peggy. Sorry, I'm picking on you today. I just
Yeah.
picked this up because you have used the word in the last, say, 7 minutes. You've used it twice. You said
Mm-hmm.
must. When we look at certain words like that, for instance, must,
Mm-hmm.
it is from somewhere.
Mm.
And if we look at it, it is from an authority figure. We pick that up from an authority figure. And looking back, we are talking about parenting. This is
Mm-hmm.
what we picked up from our parents, because our parents used to give instructions and say, you must do this by this time, full stop.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone is insisting on something, and to me, when I hear someone use must, it has a lot of weight behind
Mm-hmm.
it, because it
Mm-hmm.
is coming from that place of authority. You
Yeah.
must do this, because there's a consequence, that if you
Yes.
don't do this, there is a consequence for that. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
the use of words. I mean, because there are a lot of words that we grew up hearing, that when we use the words now and thinking of, I mean, like our journey that we've gone through in coaching, we understand them very differently, don't we, Peggy?
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
And these are some of the languages that we need to be gradually erasing from our daily conversation with our children. because again, these are stumbling blocks, these are communication blocks. And when we use words authoritative languages like that, we're wondering why are they not listening to us, right? It's just like when you remember, Nelly, when we were kids and growing up, you know that if you go and commit a crime or you do something that your when you do something against your parents' wishes or what they've asked you to do, they're going to beat you. They're going to give you some whipping. And in a way, or the same like school, when you go late to school, I know that they used to beat us in the morning when you go late to school. And so that has been done over and over and over, and you're used to it. So you just go and commit a crime, or you just go use late because you know that you already know your punishment, and you're psychologically prepared to take that whipping because you know that at the end of the day they're just gonna beat me, and when they beat me, it's just gonna hurt, and then that's it. So again, these are some of the things that when it comes to authoritative languages within our family unit, when we use them over and over and over, our children, they don't take it seriously. In our mind, we think that maybe those authoritative languages are a way of letting them actually obeying and do what we are asking them to do. But they are saying it as, what, after all, I've been hearing that thing over and over and over. In fact, it doesn't even mean anything to me. So this is where Nelly and I were saying that we need to step down. We need to step down and make the environment. And that brings us nicely to the third point where we talk about create a safe space for honest conversation, where we need to step down. The thing is that we need to, as parents, I know sometimes it's hard to accept, but it is the honest truth. We need to bring ourselves, we need to be functioning at how do they call it? Level playing field, if I may put it that way. But that does not mean that your children govern you, or your children, or you don't have an upper edge. That doesn't mean that you're losing or you've lost your parental control. No, it doesn't mean that. But you function in an environment where your kids feel like, hey, this is a safe environment. I can feel free to talk to my parents. I can tell them whatever thing I can express how I feel. I can tell them whatever thing I want to say. But you would have built that respect. Even though I've made it a level playing field, there is something still called respect. There are some boundaries that you won't cross. You can speak, you can say, but there are certain things that when you get here, you know that this is the boundary. Do not cross this boundary. So it's about I think for me, we need to learn. And I say this as a parent, that I am learning. Sometimes that my childhood mindset will kick in. But then I need to remind myself that I am not in those days anymore. I am in the present, the Gen Z's generation. So I need to, like, okay, let me adjust myself and, you know, go with the flow, so that at the end of the day, you just want to make sure that your kids actually know that they're in a safe environment, they are free to speak, and they know that they're being heard and listened to and seen. Yeah, so Nelly, I don't know whether I know you've got some statistics on that third point as well.
Yeah, but just before I go to that statistics, um, speaking with parents, especially in my role as a social worker,
Mm.
parents complained that they feel the system has taken away their power and
Mm.
given it to their children, because their children can say whatever they want to say, and the social services will listen to the child and not the parent.
Mm.
And like what I said, from what I've been saying and from my experience, is it depends on the relationship, and
Yeah.
communication plays a big role, because
Mm.
if a child feels that they are not listened to, that is already communication breakdown.
Mm.
Children want attention. Some seek validation. That is why it is important for us to praise our children, because it encourages them to do the good things that we have observed of them. But when
Mm-hmm.
we are very critical, our children, they feel that no matter what they do, they will never please their parents. And now, in my role as a life coach, this is what so many adults come or talk about, because they say they need to do this, and that to please their parents. And sometimes I ask, why do you need to please your parents? They say, because that is what I must do, and things like that. So again, you see how the must comes in.
Yeah.
And when we do things as parents to our children, it doesn't end there when the children are young. This is now us as adults. We are being impacted by the way we were parented. So it will be the same thing with our children. So which is why it is necessary for parents now to start evaluating our communication styles, especially with our children. It doesn't mean that we give our children all that they ask for. We are the parents. We need to be in control. And we don't need to make our children our friends.
Yeah.
Or no, the other way around. We don't need to make our children and parents are not friends, but our children can be friends to their parents, in the sense that parents are not to be taken adult information or their issues and sharing with their children. Though
Yeah.
unfortunately, so many parents do that. But then give children that psychological safety, that nurturing environment where they can come and talk to you about their day, because that's how friendship works. They can talk to you, but you know what you can and can't share with them. That's when you remain in control. So now to my statistics. Oh, do you have something to say there before I go?
No, no, no.
Okay. So for the statistics, it shows that 52% of parents report that children using phones during conversation reduces meaningful interactions. This is what we had said before.
Yeah.
And another research is only 1 in 3 family eat together daily, and this limits the opportunity for discussion. We have also talked about this, but it is to create time for
Yeah.
physical activities so that you listen, because sometimes it will be at that time that we can probably even like have hugs or just be there. Like sometimes everyone can be at home, but then everyone is doing their own things. And parents will say, but I've been in the house the whole day with the children. Yeah, you are there, but you are not with the children, because
Yeah.
everyone is doing their own thing. The main point there is the emotional availability, because everyone can be doing their own things, and probably children can be communicating with people miles and miles away and not within the family. So is to take advantage the little time that you have. And I think, Peggy, it goes back to the intentions that we have as far as life coaching is concerned, whereby we
Yeah.
say the only life we have is the present. Forget about the past, because it brings worries,
Yeah.
it brings anxiety, depression. Also forget about the present, about the future, because who knows, the future might never come. But the only time you have is now. So make it a habit to make maximum use of the time that you have. Even if it's just 1 minute or 2 minutes, make that time count, so that if it's with your child or with some other person, let it count, even with strangers, because you don't know if you will be the only one to put a smile on that person's face on that day. So the only time we have is now. Make the present moment count, so that that's when being intentional comes in. So there are many different
Absolutely.
strands that are interconnected.
Absolutely. And don't be like me. My kids, they already know me that whenever we say, are we gonna watch a movie? Yes, me. But when they put that movie, When it's just like 15, 20 minutes, I'm gone. And do you know the day I actually knew that this thing was serious? My daughter took me out we went out to the cinema. And when we came back, she was explaining to the siblings how the day went. It was enjoyable. And I heard my son ask, did mom stay awake throughout the that's when that's when I knew this thing. And then me, I was just like, yes, yes, yes. And then my daughter said, mom, at one time I saw you nodding, but it wasn't. Yeah. Again, like we say, it's about at least I tried. At least I will be there. I'll come. Let's watch the movie. You know. And sometimes I say, if you people catch me sleeping, wake me up. Wake me up. We tired. You know, maybe the day we've come back that day, the day they want to have that movie is that day that you've been busy, your brain is tired, you know, and then you've got they say the mind is willing. Is it the mind is willing, but the body is what, weak or something?
This week,
You
yeah.
know, we have the mind, we have the intention, you know, that real intention to spend time with them, but the body is tired, you know. So again, like I say, let's practice. Don't be like me.
You know, I my there was a time. I mean, this is like I think it's like 12 years ago, but till today, my children still say it. So I used to tell my children, don't run away from your fears, face your
Mm.
fears. So there was a time I took them for a fair. I took them for this fair. You had all these rides and things like that. And they knew fully well that at the time, I was scared of heights.
Mm.
So when we got there, I was like, okay, you go. And they were like, Mom, you have come here. You need to get on a ride as well. Inside me, I was panicking because I knew that I don't like heights. And you know how these things are really, really high. So I was like, but you know, I'm scared of heights. I said, yeah. I said, Mom, you need to preach what do you say? Do what you preach or something
Practice
like
what
that.
you preach.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. I said, you got me there. I will go. We went on this ride. So as we went, one daughter sat this way, one sat the other way, and they put the buckles and things like that. And before it even took off, I was already panicking. So we got somewhere mid-air. I was screaming, and mind you, the whole of that ride, I'm sure there were like more than 20 people there. I was the
Mm-hmm.
oldest, but it didn't matter. I was crying. I cried, honestly, I cried. And I asked my children, can they pause it? They were like, no, mom, till that cycle finishes. And you know, it got somewhere at the top and then they just dropped it.
Drop. Oof.
See, my heart sank. I cried and I said my last prayer and I asked God to forgive me of all the sins that I've committed. And then it got to that point where I could not speak. I was just sat there, quiet. You know, I had given up. So my children, they held me on both sides. So eventually, the ride ended. I could not walk because my whole body was shaking. So coming down from the ride, we had some steps to go down those stairs. My children on both sides, they held me and we went down the stairs. I looked for somewhere and sat. And they continued. They went on other rides, and I was there. They came some hours after. I was still sat where they left me because my eyes,
Your eyes.
everything. And I was like, but they were really happy because they said, Mom, at least you overcame one of your fears by just going on that ride. And it was the most difficult, whether the most,
Mm-hmm. The
I don't
tallest
know how
height, the
the,
tallest ride. No, that
And
one.
so since that, imagine it's more than 12 years, and they're still saying it till today. When something happened, they're like, "Oh, mom, do you remember that time when?" I'm like, "Yeah, I remember, but you people helped me in a way." So
That.
that it happened once, but
Mm-hmm.
for them is very, very significant,
Yeah.
because I think that was one of the times that they saw how vulnerable I was.
That same thing happened to me when we went for a ride, and me there, I was trying to help my daughter. I said, "Let me accompany, let me let me accompany her because she was scared of heights and of rides." I said, "Okay, let me accompany you." Hi, we got there. She was the one instead. So when you get to a point where the thing is just like she will say, "Mom, scream, mom, scream." I was like, "Oh my God!" From that day up to today, if you ask me to go on a ride, life. I
The
said,
funniest,
and again,
the children
this just
enjoy
tell us,
it.
yes, they enjoy it. Now she's overcome her fear. She goes even to the tallest one now and
Ah,
says she'll tell me that, "Mom, is because I kept doing it. I've over." I said, "No, me, I'll not. I don't want. If it is that one, let me know overcome that fear." But this is just to tell us that as parents, we've also got our own vulnerability. We're not perfect beings. We're
oh,
not perfect. And there are days that when you see, like, what? People will say, "Oh, you're preaching this thing. Look, every day I always say we are all work in progress. And whether you're a parent watching and listening right now, in terms of the communication, you may not be good at it. You may still be learning. You may have done some bits and you feel like there's still more to do. It's okay. That communication may have broken down and you feel like maybe your kids are not listening or you're not listening to your kid. There is still time for you to. This is the moment where you can say, "You know what? I can still learn. I can learn." Because the highest and the greatest gift you can give your child is that safety, that emotional safety, that presence to show, "You know what? I am listening. I can see you. I can hear you." Right. So it is very important that we, especially from the Afro-Caribbean background, we need to really refrain our communication method and making sure that our kids can listen to us. Yes, the system may be encroaching into our parenting style. But like I always say, if you as a parent actually know your values and know what you stand for and actually know what is good and best for your children, you will make sure that you implement certain things at home that is going to give those children the confidence, to be able to interact out there and tell these people who are so-called the system that you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing, you know how to communicate, you got the skills, you know what you so they want to also believe and see that you are actually doing what aligns with what I don't know what in the best interest of the children, put it that way. Because I always say at the end of this, all about safeguarding, about making sure that we are working in the best interest of the children and we have the capability of safeguarding these children. Now, if they come and see that you are not communicating with the children and the child is feeling like they're not being heard, what is going to happen? They're going to step in. And this is where we feel like maybe our power, our parenting, the power, our parenting responsibility has been taken away from us. Yeah.
yeah, I
So
think
Nelly,
this is really important. I think this will be a topic for another day, because I had
mm,
in one session I had shared about my experience where school, one of my daughters was in school, and I kept getting phone calls from school, and I had to
mm,
stand up for my daughter, because at home we had that good communication. So whatever was going on in school, my daughter
mhm,
would tell me. And
yeah.
to cut a long story short, school kept on ringing me every day, and this day I had had enough. And when one of the teachers from school rang me, I listened and listened and listened. I was patient. When he finished talking, I said, "Sir, I sent my child to your school for you to teach her, but
Mm,
instead, you are not helping her. You are my child doesn't feel comfortable coming to school. I said,
Yeah.
sir, I am a social worker. I
Mm.
work with other children and families. I
Yeah.
know my children. I know what my children are going through, and I am supporting my children.
Mm-hmm.
That was the phone call. And the next day, after for about 5 months, I had been getting phone calls, three, at least three
Mm-hmm.
phone calls a week.
Mm.
The next day, after that phone call, I got a call from school again, and they say, Nelly, your child has done really, really well. You need to celebrate her and things like that. And I was like, that happened yesterday, and she'd already told me. So it's not like it happened only today. And since then,
Yeah.
I didn't get those calls. So we need, if like in my case, if I didn't have that, if I was not having that open communication with my child, I wouldn't have
Mm.
known what was going on in school. And probably I could have not been able to advocate for her, because I had to
Yeah.
advocate for her because I knew that she was telling me what was going on in school. So this is just
Mm-hmm.
an example of sometimes children, things happen to children in school, and teachers have their own interpretations, parents have their own interpretations, and when
Mm-hmm.
they get to school, is whose interpretation are they going to take? Probably the parent doesn't know the child's interpretation, and
Mm-hmm.
it gives the upper hand to the school or the
Mm-hmm.
system, and that is how the system takes advantage, because
Yeah.
it is clear that there's communication problem. And if there's a communication problem between child and parent, what else could be going on in that home?
Yeah.
So parents, you have the responsibility to examine your communication style and make
Yeah.
amendments. The skills are there to be learned. It's uh, it's being brave to ask for help. So
Yeah.
let's erase that mentality that asking for help is a weakness. It's because
Mm.
you want to change your current situation. So go out there, ask for help from appropriate sources. And if someone provides you help, don't just accept the help because it is help. Let that
Yeah.
help be something that will change your situation in a positive way, because you need to be
Absolutely.
proactive.
Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. So yeah, that honestly, that was. I hope we've actually learned something, because again, like I said, when we come on session like this, I pick a few stuff from Nelly, and we bounce off each other, we learn new things, and that is the mindset that we have. Nobody is perfect. Perfection. My mentor always tell me that perfection is nonsense. There's nothing as perfection, and it's all about learning every day to be good parents, to be do our best, give the best
Yeah.
that we can to our kids. So we hope that you learned something from this session today. And like we always say, if you're watching after, if you have a thought, drop it in the comment. If you want us to talk about a specific topic, leave it in the comment. Nelly and I will always pick it up. And then, yes. And of course, if you want to come and be a part of a panel to share something, please, by all means, reach out to us, and we will add you to this panel, so it can be a three-way conversation, which is great. So without further ado, Nelly, I don't know if you got anything to end, and then we can close it for the day.
I think you've ended it nicely. Just to say thank you so much, and learn, learn, learn. Be open to learning. Thank you, and have a
And
nice weekend.
and happy Mother's Day. If we don't have the chance to say happy Mother's Day, I think it's on Sunday. Happy Mother's Day. Keep being the wonderful mom, the wonderful parents, and keep doing your best. So we love you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.